The easiest way that I try and say it is if you think of a Ferris wheel, how you'd move a Ferris wheel, you'd have to push or pull down on one side of the Ferris wheel, and that would create a torque in a direction either way, this way. And then if you see a merry-go-round, if it's laying flat on the ground and you spin it, you'd have to apply a force on either side or opposing sides, and that would spin it in that direction. And then the other one is sagittal plane torque, so looking down the line view, how would you pitch the body more steeply forwards or into extension? What we found is, by looking at all the data, is most tour players, anything they talk about is rotational values, because they have high values of frontal plane torque. So they don't talk about frontal plane torque much because they have it. And if you have too much frontal plane torque going like a Ferris wheel, it tends to be better for the drive than it is for a wedge. And it also would tend to create a bit more of a shallowing of the downswing of the hand path because of the way the pivot would move. And so tour players have that in gobs.
I am live with Jon Tattersall from Tattersall Golf up in Atlanta. So Jon, second time on the show. Thank you for coming on. It's been a while. And
thanks for having me, Pete. No, I appreciate it. It's always an interesting back and forth.
Yes, we always do. Whether it's in text or messaging on social media or wherever we seem to get have discussions, it goes really well. So it's always a pleasure to have you on, and lots to talk about. Lots going on in golf and coaching world. And you are spending, or you are having more of a concentrated effort on social media posts, which is fun to see because you have always had very good scientific data. You have always put that information out. And was there a reason that you wanted to do that, or just that we're somewhat similar in age? I'm saying post 50. We've crested the 50 mark. We'll leave it at that.
Too far post 50. Yeah.
But was it adopting social media that kind of late to it, but saying, okay, this isn't going anywhere?
Yeah, no, it was that. I mean, Frederick, who I used to coach, Lindblom, told me years ago, I should be on social media. And it was just too much effort. And then a few people told me that. And then, quite frankly, it was more born of frustration that there was a lot of stuff being put out that I didn't like. And it was kind of sexy, new, but wrong, in my opinion, from what I'd seen. And I found that I was answering the same question to clients a lot. And I met with Peter Finch, who's done incredibly well with social media in England. I mean, if you're a golf pro in England, it's a tough road to hoe. There's nowhere near as much money in golf as there is over here. And he and Rick Shields have done phenomenally well.
Very much so.
Using social media. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, he taught with Peter taught with Rick Shields in Manchester. And Rick was doing the YouTube stuff. And so Peter said, I started doing YouTube stuff just to get my book full. And then what he found was really fascinating was people would watch his swing video on how to cure a slice or a hook, whatever, and then come and get exactly the same lesson that he did on social media. And he said, I didn't understand it, but I started asking. And I said, what I found was people were confident or comfortable with the way you delivered the information. So they got an idea of how you were. And then they also got some information and then wanted clarity on it. So for me, when I was looking at social media early on, it looked very redundant to do it. And it felt like I was doing a Me Too thing. And I thought, you know what? I get tired of answering the same question. I don't like what's being put out there. I do have a lot of information that I think works from people I've gathered it from. And so I really did it just to kind of keep people like us, the bumper things on bowling, to keep them in the alley when bowling, to keep them going straight, basically. And I've really been surprised by the number of people that come in for a lesson and say, I really like what you're doing on social media. So I think, there's learning experts out there. We need to hear the same thing so many times in different ways to really make a change. And our brain is a search engine. It's designed to search information. And so if something is not working, we are going to go off and search more information. So there was a great quote by a coach years ago. I may bore you, but I hope I don't confuse you. And so a lot of why I've done this has been for that reason. And I enjoy the back and forth in the community. There are some idiots out there who just, they just want to argue. It's like, you can argue. Like I was a post the other day and I said something and this guy was like, I said, you do what you want, but I'm just telling you what the scientists would tell me. Like, well, you need to get new scientists. And this is coming from a guy probably in his basement, like, I don't know what data you have. I'm telling you what Ping have. I'm telling you what Sasho has, what Quan has. Like, I'm telling you the things I've seen by people way smarter than me. So there is that. That's annoying, but you just got to move on and put it out there.
I had that. Andrew Rice told me a long time ago. He said, when I said, I got to start a YouTube channel. And I don't know how many years, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he said, one piece of advice is don't have interactions, don't get caught up in a troll interaction. And I have a video on my YouTube page that was about spining of shafts. I said, don't waste your money, because whether you consider it a weak point when a shaft is being made or a strong point when they weld it, metal shafts, whether you're going to, whatever you gain in one direction, north and south, you're going to give up in east and west. So you're going to give up directional control for trajectory control, or pick up trajectory and sacrifice directional. But the whole point of the video that I say at the end is it's so minuscule when it comes to the wind and slope and all these other things that it's not worth it no matter how you look at it. And my God, the garage mechanics that came after me on that one. And I said, okay. I said, Sasha was on, we talked about it. Eric from Ping was on, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Fujikura did the study. I had the study from the 35 years of a guy that I learned club fitting from, who had 40,000 fittings in the system, that said it doesn't do shit. So, but I made that mistake and went down that rabbit hole. And I think that was the last time. That's why when we had that, when you posted that putting video and I messaged you, and that one fellow, I said, John, I'm not talking to this guy because what he said was so ridiculous. I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah.
But I had given up on that. And, but so I get where you're coming from, and I'm sure a lot of people listening.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's and it's like anything. Like, are you gonna? I don't have the energy, or I don't think it's productive to respond to things, and I'm just trying to put it out. And then if somebody has a disagreement, great. If it's a healthy disagreement, more power to it. But if it isn't, and you're just angry because he doesn't agree with what you're saying, then fine. I'm just moving on.
I've asked that because I asked Sasha, I asked John Sinclair, I had Patty Miller, who's a nutritionist from out in Scottsdale. I have some number, and I'll ask you as well, is why do you think, and I'll give you the answer what they said, because they all said the same thing. Why do you think that experts in certain fields, golf, we'll use golf as the example, can look at the exact same data, not even an abstract, but like hard numbers or something on a screen, and come up with two completely different or contradictory summaries or results, interpretations, however you want to phrase that? Do you have any, because you see it in golf?
Yeah. My standard answer is you could have a map of Chicago, you could have a map of New York. They're both correct. But if you're in Chicago with a map of New York, it's no help to you. So your starting point and the world view you have going into the issue is definitely taints the outcome, I think. And then if you've performed in that sport and you believe something, it's very hard to give up that belief because it's been tested in whatever environment you think is stressful. So, I mean, I've had tour players tell me stuff that makes absolutely no sense to me, and they've got their name on the bag and made a lot of money. So I'd be foolish to say, well, you're wrong. Now I can say, technically that's not correct, but if you believe that and you can do that, that clearly works. Me trying to be correct in that situation doesn't necessarily help the player play better. And that's part of the unknown scenario of performance, I would say. But I think starting point is very difficult, you have that no matter what you say. And some people just refuse to give up on that. Now, looking at data is difficult. Like if you're actually looking at data and you can do the math to know the data is correct and then you disagree, then I think you got a personality issue, in my opinion. But I don't know what Sasha said.
But no,
how I look at it.
Sasha and John both and Patty both thought it was the first words they said was bias. one of the two sides that has a bias, and usually, and I agree with, usually to protect something that they're financially connected to, or they're mentally invested, or emotionally mentally invested in. Which makes a lot of, and when you dig on some of these things, you start to understand it more, especially when you're in your field.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult, I think, to look at actual math, and you agree with how the math has been calculated, or maths, as we say in England, and then still disagree. That would be, I'm sure it happens in academia. We know it happens in our world, but that takes some special kind of dysfunction, I think, if you're willing to do that. Then it happens.
Yes, and now you a fair amount of your information, and I'll say recent meaning anywhere from 3 to 12 months, has been on, and you've done a lot of work with force plates. I believe last time you were on, you said you use the GASP, JSP.
Correct. Yeah.
A lot of your discovery and information that you put out has dealt with frontal plane torque. So for everyone listening that might not be aware, that's the pressure shifting from left to right when the industry, or what's being put out there that let's say the younger teachers are gravitating to, or some of the listeners might be gravitating to, is on rotational. So I'd like to dive into that, because if somebody's watched your stuff and they're not computing or they're not agreeing with it, I want them to at least hear your deeper understanding and explanation for that.
Yeah, the GASP plates, first of all, are force and pressure in 6 degrees of motion. And they're dual plates. So you need to have dual plates to get good data. If you're on a single plate or you're on a pressure mat, it's not a fair fight. So you need to see, you don't need to buy them. They're getting more and more prevalent, but I guarantee you somebody has them. And even if you don't buy them, at least see what it's showing you, and then you can extrapolate your thoughts from seeing good data. So I don't use the plates all the time. Blake Stark, who I coach with, has the plates. We use them to confirm things a lot of times. I cannot for a second quantify the actual amounts of force. I can, because I've seen it so much, fairly well predict the direction of the force and the timing of the forces just from seeing it enough. If you just see it enough, there's only so many ways it can happen. So the easiest way that I try and say it is, if you think of a Ferris wheel, how you'd move a Ferris wheel, you'd have to push or pull down on one side of the Ferris wheel, and that would create a torque in a direction either way, this way. And then if you see a merry-go-round, if it's laying flat on the ground and you spin it, you'd have to apply a force on either side or opposing sides, and that would spin it in that direction. And then the other one is sagittal plane torque, so looking down the line view, how would you pitch the body more steeply forwards or into extension? What we found is, by looking at all the data, is most tour players, anything they talk about is rotational values, because they have high values of frontal plane torque. So they don't talk about frontal plane torque much because they have it. And if you have too much frontal plane torque going like a Ferris wheel, it tends to be better for the drive than it is for a wedge. And it also would tend to create a bit more of a shallowing of the downswing of the hand path, because of the way the pivot would move. And so tour players have that in gobs. And so they can then talk about how would they move the Ferris wheel in a rotary fashion. And so a lot of tour players, if you said, I like so-and-so swing, you probably would see a fairly balanced frontal plane torque with a horizontal plane torque. Blake and I have tested a bunch of tour players at this point, a bunch of amateurs. We went to Titleist, we went to TPI, we looked through all of their data. We haven't found one tour player yet that has higher horizontal plane torque than they do frontal plane torque. They may have a balance of those two, but we haven't had anybody yet that has higher horizontal than frontal. And if you think of the modern game, you have to drive it well. And so they're driving it well and hitting wedges well enough. If you get really, really good at horizontal, you may be better with your wedges. You probably won't have many, though, because your drive is unlikely going to be as good. So, I want my players to be as good as possible with wedges, but I want them to hit more wedges. That would be the way I kind of...
That's one way to get better.
That's one way to get better. Be average with wedges, but have 7 of them versus one phenomenal one and the rest are 4 and 5 irons. That doesn't work.
Well, I think as you mentioned TPI, for anybody who's watched their site on YouTube, as we're touching on social media, that Dr. Rose has always said that most of the better wedge players on the planet that they had in their database will move up and away as opposed to down. So still there seems to me, there is, at least as you said, at least equal frontal as there is rotational.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get the language wrong on those.
Yeah, and they have, and sagittal too is the standing up. So I may have mentioned last time I was on, but some of the longest hitters I've taught can do a standing backflip.
Wow.
So if you think about that, the energy and the force that's required. So if you could do a standing backflip, I could push my feet towards the camera and bend backwards. That would be ultimate power and extension of the spine and the pelvis. I've talked to Greg about this. I'm on the advisory board for Titleist for TPI. And early extension is greatly misunderstood and terribly fixed online because people, so there's frontal, there's horizontal, there's sagittal. People look at somebody extending and their butt's coming underneath them and their body's standing up. And so they try and pitch their butt back to keep their back on a wall. That is a sure way to probably hurt your back and knock your early extension. So extension is a good thing. Every powerful player has extension. Their pelvis tucks underneath them. They go into posterior tilt. Their upper spine is going backwards. At the same time, the golf club is pulling them forwards and down. And so they are pushing away from the golf ball in space as they extend. So their butt is back on that line, but their butt went from like this way to that way. Their butt's still back, but their body now is curved this way. The pelvis is tucked underneath them. And so then a very, very powerful stabilizing of the pelvis position, posterior tilt, but their entire body is backwards. They're too far down the line to redo it. But Greg, if you talk to him, will say, yeah, I want players, if they're standing with a wall behind them, they're going to jump backwards through that wall. They're going backwards. So you've probably seen Justin James is one of the world long drive guys.
It's crazy.
I mean, ridiculous. I mean, I think he weighs, I've seen his force plate data. They have it at TPI. And I think he weighs like, I don't know, 230 pounds. He jumps backwards about 6 inches while swinging the club at 150 miles an hour. So he has a massive amount of energy pulling him forwards. He weighs 230 and he's jumping backwards 6 inches. And when they put him on force plates, I think he pushed into the ground somewhere around 630 pounds of force.
Sounds about right, what I saw on the...
Yeah. And it's early, and the left arm's before parallel coming down. So I tell people this, like all the stuff we argue about, I said, look, if you've seen force plates and you still don't believe what I'm telling you, then you are just so bought into your position. Because once you've seen where force is being applied in the swing, the direction, the duration, the amount, you cannot unsee it. You just can't look at a golf swing the same way. And as I said, you don't have to buy force plates, but you should be looking at it and then looking then at how golf swings look. So if I see an issue now in a golf swing, we could all see, it doesn't take rocket scientists to look at there's things wrong with the people's swing. So I rarely try and change what I see. I try and think, what is the issue? And then what opposing force do I need to put in to change that motion? And then try and go that way. And it does a couple of things. It generally is the correct thing they need because it's invisible. Unless you've seen force plates, you can't see it. But it's also kind of freeing up because you are making them move more athletically, like you did long drive. So like, you could look at a swing on video, but when you're on a long drive tee, it's visceral what kind of energy you feel. So you cannot fake it. You can't make it look good. You either have energy or you don't. And too many people are out there trying to make a swing look correct, and it's not alive, in my opinion. So it's got to have that actual oomph in there, if you will.
Some of the and I'll just say some, not all of them, because there's a fair amount out there. Some of the anti-force plate people, when I ask them, and some have been on the show, I asked them, well, why are you against or seem to be against this? And as we were talking in the pre-show, there was the panel at the Open Forum this year where but and I think this is sometimes where the discussion needs to be more in depth instead of 20 minutes on a panel or on on a type forum is probably the worst place to do it.
Yeah.
But when I have these longer conversations with people, the discussion goes deeper, in that some of them have said, it's not that I'm against force plates. It's just, I don't believe that it's the end all of teaching the way that's many in the industry are making it out to be. Now that I can understand, because I remember when Trackman came out, and I had nothing against Trackman, and Frederick, don't hate me for this. I hope you're still going to come on at some point. But I said, it's a phenomenal measuring device, but if you don't understand the causes of the numbers that you're getting, and then know what to do to apply the changes or adjustments to somebody, you can really screw somebody up, and it's going to be paint by numbers. I said, Mona Lisa, you could paint it by numbers, it'll look great, but it will never, ever be as good as the original. So if some of them are taking that perspective, but their online persona is kind of giving a different message, but in private, they're saying, I just think that it's not the end all. It could be something good. That I can understand, but I do think it's, and I haven't used them. Everyone around here, Jason Sutton has them, Tim Cook has them. I just haven't gone and played with them, with those guys. But it's another
I would
tool.
suggest you would do. But I think at the seminar where we met, I had a picture of the SR-71, which is a Blackbird with the fastest high flying plane that we know of. It was designed on a slide rule. So clearly those engineers understood the principles of flight. They didn't need massive computers. They use a slide rule. So if the people against force plates are saying, I understand the principles of force, therefore I don't need force plates, and if I have force plates, that makes me lazy and I don't need to understand the principles, I completely agree with that. But they can't say force plates don't work, and they can't say force isn't involved in the golf swing, because those two things are not correct. So if you have a higher level of understanding of force, and then you say, I don't need force plates, I would agree with that right now. Like, I've used force plates so much, I can literally teach that. Like, I had a guy this morning. I said, look, when you're swinging, I'm not seeing the grass torn up under your feet. I need the grass torn up under your feet. I need you to twist the ground. I need to push the ground. There's my force plates today. I didn't need force plates today, but I understood what I was looking for. So if that's what they're saying, more power to them. But again, we get into these kind of camps about things. But if somebody said to you, hey, force plates don't work and there's no force in the swing, then that's conversation's over.
Exactly.
It's point. Yeah, walk away, because you're not going to convince that person.
Well, I think all of the things, whether you agree with, if you're whatever stance you're taking, pro or anti, let's take the anti one for a minute. And you, from what I have learned, and this is just N equals 1, that for somebody to have the knowledge of force, or fill in the blank, the knowledge of X, that usually takes a minimum of 3 decades of studying that to understand the ins and outs of the application, how it changes from person to person, knowing the nuances, all these different things. So somebody who says, I've been studying force for 3 or 5 years, I'm sorry, but there's no way you're going to understand it to the level that you can say that you don't need something like a force plate. If you're going to be, especially for higher level players, because you can't dial them in. The window is so small to see what they're doing that it's exceptionally difficult to do it. It's like someone saying, well, I can pick up the difference in 300 RPM on a driver spin. No, you can. I don't care how long you've done it. By eye, they could do it by measurement.
No, absolutely. I mean, you've seen it enough. You might know something's off, but we wouldn't. Again, with force plates, I could tell if the sequence off. I could tell if they're not pushing enough, but I'm not going to tell them what percentage of weight they're pushing, what direction they're pushing exactly. I mean, I'd have a darn good idea from a starting point. And a lot of times now when Blake and I look at it, I'll jump in and say, can you tell me about this? Because I've got a suspicion about this. So he's scanning all of the data, and the graphs are very, very complicated to look at. There's a lot of information. So it is intimidating. So you need someone who knows what they're doing with it. But I will look at the swing, I'll watch the ball flight, look at the data and say, hey, Blake, tell me, like, where are we? Are we frontal? Are we horizontal? It looks biased this way. Give me an idea of timing. How much are they loading to the trail side? That kind of stuff. So it looks to me like they're not loading enough, for instance. And loading to me now, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, probably, I'd have a completely different answer then to I do now. So yeah, you need to have an understanding of the golf swing. You need to have had enough reps looking at golf ball flight, and then this would layer on top of it. If you took a brand new coach and told them how to use force plates, that could be dangerous. Yeah, like anything.
Yeah, I think
we've all got to learn.
I think our era, our age group, within a, let's say, a 10-year range, more or less both directions, was just fortunate enough by the when we got into coaching that we were at the end of the era that you had to learn things by trial and error and just doing it repetitively and then watching and then either someone taught you, had a mentor, you learned, you read it, however you learned, you were able to develop your own knowledge. And then along came the technology, that more or less to the masses by earlier 2000s. So now for the last 20 years, for the first 20 years or so that our era was teaching, you didn't have anything except who you learn from and your own trial and error.
Slow video.
Yeah. And then and now we have all this technology. So I think we're lucky enough to have the benefit of both, to either adjust what your theories were or solidify what your theories were. I think that the teachers nowadays, that let's say a young kid, 25 years old, that's an assistant, where they're only learning how to use technology. If they don't learn the other side, meaning not using it, I think they're going to be at a very big disadvantage for their students and for their own development. And that this was kind of solidified in my own mind, scrolling through as you do on social media, I think Twitter, Instagram, and there was a post that was talking about the use of AI, that the reduction in neural development just from thinking of how to solve a problem has been reduced up to 47% using AI. That you can type it into a chat GPT or whatever AI program you're using, and now your brain's not having to work through something. Here's the answer. It doesn't have to do anything. I'm sure there's somebody out there that could argue the other, but the point is, as I'm relating it to coaching, is if you don't learn how to problem solve without something telling you what the problem is, you might be doing yourself a disservice as far as your knowledge and application.
For sure. I'd say the application, no matter how good the tools get, you still have to stand there and get someone to implement what you're doing. So I think the diagnosis has gotten better and better and easier, but still, you have to get someone to make a change and help them through that change. And then as you introduce higher levels of stress, it gets more difficult again. So that's a separate layer of learning, if you will. And I think as a young coach, like I have people come and watch me coach now, and people hit a bad shot, and if I do get nervous about the outcome, I try not to show it and just let the thing play out. Whereas years ago, I'd be like, oh shit, what happened? What do I need to fix? And now you have a stressful situation, you're layering more information on. They haven't really grasped what you wanted the first time. The hardest thing to do once you've diagnosed it, once you've come up with some kind of solution, ask them to do it, talk through it. The hardest thing in the world to do is shut up. You got to kind of let that system run a little bit. And a number of situations I've had recently where I've had recreational golfers taking a lesson, and tour players tend to come early, stay late. They don't have other jobs usually, hopefully not. And so you have a recreational player and a tour player, 15 feet apart, both working a problem. It's amazing to me how fewer balls a tour player will hit versus a recreational player, and how you can literally see the wheels turning with a tour player, hitting multiple shots, and then coming up, asking a question, and then going back. Whereas a recreational player is, they don't have the same level of understanding. They haven't hit great shots, so their anxiety level is probably higher. They're wanting constant affirmation or clarity, and so they're not letting the system kind of sort it out enough. So no matter what we get to from an AI perspective, there's still going to be human intervention as to how to get someone to do it. So it's going to be interesting times, and the AI has to learn off a good system. Like if it learns off just anything, it's not going to come up with a very good answer. Like Butch's AI learning versus an assistant. If you could capture that would be great.
I have a young student, to your point about the difference between an amateur and a tour pro is he called me after we worked on his putting last week, and he's been putting great, thankfully. But he called me and said, this was last Friday. He called me and said, I got a qualifier Monday, but I just played between qualifying and the tournaments. I just played 6 rounds in a row. But my chipping is not this or that. I said, okay, is your ball striking? Yeah, it was there, but the final round, it kind of started petering out. That's when he told me it was his 6th day of playing in this, we have this heat wave rolling through. And I said, okay, don't touch a club the next 2 or 3 days. Well, I have a qualifier Monday. I said, let me explain it to you this way. Is your problem ball striking or putting or chipping? No. What's your problem? Well, I'm tired. So why would you want to hit balls more in 95-degree heat? So let's work on the cure for what the problem is, instead of just going right to the default of every golfer on the planet. Even the tour pros, we see Bryson and Victor Hovland. Now that's a little different. Those are big tournaments, but they're out there whacking on drivers.
Yeah.
And after the 3rd round of a giant tournament where they probably practice a lot going in, and that's a little different story. Tour pros are different animals, but it's interesting. The default of most golfers is, I got to go hit balls. I got to go hit balls.
Yeah, it's definitely, dig it out of the dirt is no longer really talked about. And being with players at major tournaments, I'm always impressed with how the good ones, if they're in a reasonably good place, are very, very good at managing energy levels. They know it's a long week. Being in the heat is a big deal. Getting their body moving correctly is a big deal. So we're much smarter. I would say the sports science is much more prevalent in preparation now, where it used to be, the best player in the world, which was Hogan at the time, hit balls and said, you got to dig it out of the dirt. Guess what every other player is going to do? They're going to hit balls and dig it out of the dirt until somebody came along and did it better. So I don't know this and can't quantify it, but if Hogan had the tools we have now, highly, highly unlikely he would have done what he did. Highly, unless he just didn't like being home or something, he would be, maybe that was it. But there's better ways to do it, and we know so much more. And there has to be, like, I love motor racing. I love I don't do it anymore, but flying planes, like you fly the plane, you do a debrief. I try and get players much more into that mindset of do the task. Let's talk about the task. Let's reevaluate and let's see what was going on. And then how can we speed up that learning system and put it under stress?
I still say, and I had to go through this when I had illness and injury and everything else, that I didn't touch a club for almost 3 years. And by the 3rd year, I had so much cabin fever, for the people who live up north, we'll call it. That commercials or something, watching TV, I have a kid-size club that I would use to demonstrate easy. I would just move that slow motion as I wanted to start moving again. And as I progressed with that, I knew my own checkpoints in my swing, so I could look and do it slowly into my here, and here. The course of about 6 months of doing that, when I did come back to play, I was very, very surprised at how fast my swing fell back into place, just from doing, I call them ghost swings, because you're not hitting a ball, you're just moving. And I try to get more students to understand that, of all skill levels, to say, if you want to shorten your learning curve at least as much for hitting balls out in the heat this time of year, if you want to get more bang for your buck, practice some of these things in your house so you can do them with less stress. You're not worried about where the ball's going. You're not hotter than hell. You don't feel like you're going to fall out. And you can at least develop some of these basic patterns that we're trying to establish. And then when you go out and you hit a couple and you start, then you can feel, oh, that's a different ball position. That feels better. Now I can see it. Now you can marriage the two together. I think your advancement will happen much more quickly. I don't know if you've seen that as well, but I've seen that quite a bit recently.
What I would say, from as you were saying that, I was thinking through, like, awareness in space. If you could give that to a player, again, concepts are fairly easy to figure out. But if you telling somebody something, you have no awareness in space of where they are, then they're going to struggle. So I'd break it down to kind of get their awareness in space better. Like, I will literally push them on the practice tee. Like, I am trying to make them solve the problem. If they're moving in towards the ball too much, I'll push them in towards the ball more. So I want them to be aware of where they're going and how they need to offset those issues. So golf swing's a very complex movement. So if you can make somebody move in space in a pretty small area at speed, then whether technique is, quote unquote, correct or not, they're going to stand a pretty good chance. So all these athletes coming from other sports is a great benefit, because they're bringing those movement patterns, that awareness to our sport, which is great.
The one
As
thing,
a young lady, I started coaching. I rarely teach beginners. Sorry to jump in. I rarely teach beginners, but there's a young lady I coach now, and she's type A plus. She's a lawyer, and she's great, and she's Chinese descent, and so disciplined, and she's a dancer, and it's been fairly like she's not great with club face awareness, because there's no way to really simulate that. She's got better, but she's carrying a driver 170 yards sometimes, but she's she's petite, strong, but she's a dancer. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to tell you things like putting the dance together, and then we'll crank the music up, if you will, and you'll go faster. But she has great awareness in space. She has lower body strength. She has enough wrist strength. It's great. But I could tell her things perfectly. She didn't have those things. She couldn't hit it. So we need to do more of that kind of training, I think. And that, if you're a pro at a club and you're doing 1-hour lessons, I'd get him out there and do some basic movement stuff, like 2 or 3 times a week. It's a movement class. We don't need a ball. We don't need to fail. Let's do some things that get a movement going better, and it'll be fun. It'll be a group. You can laugh at each other, and you're gonna get them moving and get them playing better by doing that kind of stuff. There's not enough of that. Whereas a lot of golfers think it's intellectual. As I tell them, it's not a written test. You actually got to do this.
Do you? What I see is, and I'm curious I'm fairly certain that most coaches out there, instructors, see the same thing. That a lot of students will come to you, and they're very anxious to get back to the comfort of where they were, as opposed to accepting that they're in a place that they need to modify something, and there is a little bit of a learning curve, or it might take a little longer than just a couple days until they're comfortable again. And that they will, and their attitude will reflect that, where they will get very irritated if they start to hit it a little better and they're starting to get it, and then it just slips a little bit and they hit a couple crooked. If they cycle that once or twice, that their attitude gets really down very quickly. So trying to get them to understand that, maybe it's just what brings people to golf. You get that passion and that bug, and then you want that feeling. It's like a dopamine hit.
Yeah, for sure.
How have you learned to deal with that, or coach, walk people through that?
I try and make it as a couple of different scenarios. So I try and make it as comfortable as possible by telling people, if they're not very good, there's nothing you can do I haven't seen before. So, like, not in an egotistical way, just don't try and impress me. Like, I've stood there with some of the best in the world. So, you're not going to do that. So let's just not be tough on ourselves. And I'm asking you to do things you can't do by yourself. So inherently, I was told by a tour player years ago, I don't need an effing cheerleader. I need you to tell me what to do, and I'll do it. So I'm going to push you to get better than you think you're capable of. That is not going to be comfortable, because you're pushing beyond your comfort zone. If you want to play well, you would really want to play better. Consistency is not something I allow people to use in a sentence, because we're inconsistent. Tiger in his prime was inconsistent. He was just clearly better than everybody else. So it's really getting them comfortable with the idea that this will not feel good. It will feel good if you hit a shot that goes well. So my litmus is always, can you do it every time is not a fair fight. Are the good ones better? If the good ones are clearly better, then it's worth pursuing. And don't try and correct something. Keep pursuing the movements that we know are going to make it better. So that's kind of how I have the kind of standard speech on that. And from a elite player perspective, like, I've had a number of elite players talk about, they just need to think better. And I said, no, I agree, and thinking is important. And I go back and forth this with my friend Christopher Smith, because he's thinking it's all about how you think. I said, look, they're all competing against each other, not in score. They're competing on every hole. Is my drive past so-and-so's? Is he hitting it further? This is at tour level. And so, you're not going to be comfortable if you know something's wrong. So you've got to get the ball striking where you want it, and then your comfort level, your confidence level will come back. So there was a a podcast I listened to a couple of years ago. It was with Calipari, who's the Kentucky basketball
coach.
Jon Calipari. So it was a great podcast. I think it was the Ryan Holiday or whatever, the Obstacle is Away guy. It was really good from a coach's perspective listening to it. But the interview was saying, the rub on your guys is that they're very confident and they're brash. And he goes, I pushed back on that. He said, they are competent. They're competent. And so then they become confident. So you cannot fake. Like the reason Tiger was so good, he walked out there and he knew he was better than everybody else. He hit it, in the 1997 Masters, he hit it 50 yards past Nick Faldo, who was a defending champion. Every hole is 50 yards further down there. He's hitting wedges in there. Faldo's hitting mid-iron. So there has to be a level of competence, and that's what I look for in players, and that's what I try and build up in players, so that no matter what you say on the practice tee and try and get them all positive, at some point they know what's going on. You can insulate them, you can keep them by themselves, they can practice. They'll go play with somebody that they knew before, or they'll go play in a tournament, and no matter how much you BS them, they know whether it's good or not. And so you have to really work on their competency a lot. And in this game, it's constantly moving north. I mean, I get up every day trying to get my players better. All my friends try and get their players better. And so it's not a static thing. This idea that, hey, this guy was playing well and now he's not playing well. They're constantly trying to improve. They're constantly better. I'm sure people send it to you, but during the US Open, a bunch of people sent me that video of Scheffler yelling at Randy Smith. I mean, he's the best player possibly ever since Tiger, if not playing like Tiger did. And he's pissing and moaning on the practice tee. And they're like, hey, it's not just me that does this. Like, if you're going to get in there and try and get better, it's a freaking hard process.
Yeah. And for him, the multiplier of playing on that stage as the number one player in the world and trying to do things that not many others in the history have done, the emotions can run away with you. And Randy's like the perfect person for that. He knows what's happening. He just knows he has to absorb it. And
he's been around the block a few times. But it just shows you how difficult the game is, and how irrational the players are. And I don't want to say Scheffler's immune to stress, but the best players have got phenomenal amnesia, and they seem to be able to singularly focus on what they're doing. That's the impressive thing. The amnesia and the singular focus is what really, if I could give to players, would be phenomenal.
My theory on Scheffler is that where he grew up playing, he's under Randy's tutelage since he was 9 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
But he grew up playing against, because Justin Rose is coming in and out, Harrison Fraser's coming in and out, Gary Woodland. Those are just some of the ones that I'm aware of, but I'm sure there were a lot more that were playing or taking lessons or learning from Randy. And then I'm sure at some point they're all practicing around each other, and you got this young little kid and they say, Scotty, you want to go play 9 with us? And by the time he's probably 12 or 14, they're saying, do you want in the game? He knows he can't win, but that chasing that bigger brother, that status of somebody that's, you can't win no matter how good you play. They're an adult. But when you have enough years of that, when you go out on tour and you're looking at your contemporaries and you spend so many years chasing something you can never beat, he's not going to get intimidated by anybody. Not when he was 12, 13, 14, 15 playing against guys winning majors or PGA Tour events. So that was established, and you can't teach it. You can't make it happen. Maybe it's a circumstance of his position in life that he just happened to be there, and that's what he grew up with, and his environment molded him in certain ways that you just can't learn. It just has to happen.
That's the whole nature or nurture conversation. So the environment is a key word there. I think you had a phenomenal coach, Randy, and you had players coming in and out who were struggling, learning, working through it, possibly pissing and moaning, but possibly just getting on with it and working through it.
Yep.
And so you're seeing that environment. So you may not have the tools, but you're definitely seeing what is the necessary skills you need to develop. And so a lot of times I enjoy having multiple players at once working, and then having a regular person come in and take a lesson where a tour player or a very good player is practicing after taking a lesson. And they'll, jokingly, somebody like I teach a lot of Type A's, and they're pissing and moaning about something. I say, hey, so and so, how long did it take you to figure this out? Well, we've only been working here 10 years, and I'm still trying to get it. So it just reassures people this is very, very difficult, and you have to just keep on keeping on. And the difficult thing to do to me is hit very good, boring shots and not think about the outcome of the shot or what the shot could mean potentially. Like, how do you keep on hitting very, very good shots over and over and doing things? What's the saying? It's like you're not practicing success, you're practicing to see where failure is, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And getting people more comfortable with failure, because it's not a negative. We are going to fail most of the time. So how do you take failure off of the table as a negative and really get more into the debriefing scenario, not the emotional baggage that comes with failure?
Yeah. How do you give somebody the knowledge to if they have a failure, that they can work through it, that they don't panic?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been in this situation before. I know how to. I'm not comfortable with it, but I know how to maneuver through it. And I think that is, as instructor, coach, is one of the things that once they get to a certain level with their mechanics, that, like you said, it always needs some adjusting. They're trying to get better at something, but as far as playing wise, helping them understand how to maneuver through situations while they're in the heat of the moment, meaning out on the golf course playing tournament or fun or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to, as much as possible, remove the emotion from the situation so we can get down to the issue. From a coach's perspective, it's physically and mentally difficult because, phones are awesome, text is awesome, voice memos. So I'll get, somebody's won. So you're like, oh, great, they've won. And then the next 4 calls are, can't find my fucking golf ball, kind of thing. So
I tell you where I really learned that when my playing career was wound down, I was wrapping it up. I had gotten into martial arts, and at that time the economy had fallen out, so there was really nothing to do work wise except to do what I could, and then I'd have all this time on my hands. I'd go play golf, and then in the evenings we would go do either karate or jujitsu or judo or whatever we were doing. And for me to go from a place that I knew how to handle myself in most situations that I was going to be in to a place where I used to call it ammunition. Like I might have had one move developed after 6 months, and then I'm fighting guys or sparring with guys who had been doing it for 20 years. And I once I exhausted in my own head, I used to tell them, once I've exhausted my move, I'm done. I got, like in golf, I can go a million avenues. I said, it's so crazy to go from playing around the golf during the day to not know, to something where I don't know squat and don't know how to maneuver at all. It was a total different poles, but it showed me in my own head. It helped my coaching, of course, because it's like, here's what you're working with. I mean, I distinctly remember working with a lady. She was 25-ish handicap. We spent an hour on her short game. And part of it was she was very afraid to hit high shots, high pitch shots, high soft. And then, okay, we showed her how to do it. And then I went and let's go hit them over the bunker so you can get used to having some kind of variable that's stuck in your way. You can work through that. Now we go out on the course, and the 9th hole, she had to pitch it. There was a creek, that's 6 feet long, and then there's a green, and she gets out. She's deathly afraid. And I'm thinking to myself, the first thought was, how can we just worked on this? You did it for the last hour. You did it great. What's the problem? And I thought to myself, hey, dummy, she's still a beginner, like you in the martial art class. You just put her in a situation where she's totally, her mind doesn't know what direction to go. So that was very enlightening for myself as far as the learning curve of coaching.
Yeah, I think it's good to put yourself in that situation. And I didn't have much instruction growing up, so I was always trying to seek information. And a lot of great players had instruction. They were very, very good. And so I think my perspective on learning was hurt me as a player, but helped me as a coach for a long time, because I didn't assume that people should just know. Just because I could do it or could say it doesn't mean so other people could do it. So that it's not just empathy. It's like a complete, understanding and giving them time to work through it and build the skill set.
Yeah,
so like you said,
like Dr. Bedside manner.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And you're kind of in the trenches with them. You're like, okay, you really want to get better. Okay, then we are going to get better. We're going to work at it. and it's not going to be pretty, and you're going to keep working through it, and it's not all high fives and smiles. You got to be like, okay, that didn't work. So the quicker I can get people back to, let's get back to work, rather than if I hit it great, I'm here. If I hit it bad, I'm here. It's like, how can you be more that stoic mindset? I know we started this conversation talking about AI, but basically that's, no matter what AI does, that's where we need to implement and get better with people on the skill building stuff. And that's really where I'm trying to spend my time. I'm trying to learn as much as possible technique wise. I'm trying to then help as much as possible with implementation.
One of the
my young daughter's just walked in the room to say hi.
She's okay. She's doing good. Tell her I said hello.
She's saying hello. She's got her nails done, so she's all.
It's all pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a number you put the center pivot I want to touch on because you identify it with the FootJoy logo on the back of your shirt, which is always in the center, like kind of at the base of the neck. We can use a reference point for those listening, maybe in their car. Has that gotten a lot of attention as far as good and bad? And if so, what is the negative impact to you?
Yeah. So Chuck Cook's a good friend. And Chuck, I was with him last week doing an event in Pittsburgh area, and he'd been. I always pick his brain because he's a legend, and he'd been at this Ping short game thing a few months ago where he had Mayo, Como, Sasho, Rigid, Chuck. I forget. I'm missing
Derek Dominski, because I think Ping brought all three of those guys, the wedge guys, in.
Yeah. So I think they were all there, and somebody said, like, I know Como pretty well, and somebody said, Tattersall is, and they're like, Chuck's like, yeah, I know Jon very well. He said, what's all this swaying stuff about? And so I looked at Chuck. I was like, are they taking the piss? He goes, no. I said, did you tell them? And I said, Como, seen the same stuff I've done. He goes, yeah, they just think, you're trying to get people to sway too much. I was like, okay, well, if they push appropriately the other way, they're not going to sway much. So an elite player doesn't look like they move much. But if you took away one of the legs from pushing, they'd fall over. They're pushing incredibly hard, both sides. The net force of that, or the net of those two opposing forces, is a pretty centered upper body. So a recreational golfer would look like they're not moving much. But if you put them on force plates, the tour player is pushing side, front, back so much to stay centered. And a recreational player has no pushing at all, so they're centered and hardly moving, creating no forces whatsoever. So the net of those two forces, because you're pushing and your feet are wider than the shoulders, if you will. If I push hard to the right, hard to the left, and my legs are at an angle, if I do it this way, those two opposing forces are pushing inward at an angle that keeps the upper spine pretty centered. So the upper spine is centered, the tailbone moves side to side, and the thoracic is moving a lot. Rotating. So if I could, think of it like you've got side movement with the legs, and you've got a pretty centered thoracic mobility. And so the net is the top of the spine doesn't move very much, but there is a lot of opposing forces happening, both side and front back to keep that from happening. And we're in flexion, so to stay in flexion and rotate, there is an extension component. So it's not only side center, but it's up and down centered. So that's why extension is an important component. If you try and get more into flexion in the downswing, and the club's pulling you forwards, you've got a problem with that too. So I think that's why some of the longest people I've ever taught can do a standing backflip. They're pushing and extending and jumping as the club's opposing there. So that's why centered upper body pivot, linear forces in the lower body, offset by rotational forces.
Have you been able to identify any differences? And what I mean by differences is when Scotland was on, it's hard to believe it's almost 6 years ago. And we were talking at that point about the differences. We were using the Adams theory, the post system theory. And Scott said it was interesting that stack and tilt guys that they measured still had a 75% pressure shift to the trail leg, more of a center revolver rotate around the spine had, I think it was upwards of 85, and like a rear poster, a Gary Woodland type would have around 90 90 to 95 plus. Gary Woodland, I think JB Holmes was another one. Have you seen or been able to identify anything that would allow some sort of nuances as far as, is there more frontal plane torque or less frontal plane torque for different people, and they still seem to be able to play very well? Or have you seen that if they're playing well and they get it more to an equilibrium, meaning it's centered as far as the upper and the lower moves a little more, that they're able to hit it a little better?
Yeah. So if you had somebody who was supremely strong, they could be more inefficient than a Justin Thomas. Like if Justin Thomas, for instance, at his weight, tried to stay centered with his lower body, stack in the backswing, he may be a teaching pro somewhere. He's not going to be a tour player. Just the physics of his body could not produce enough force to get that outcome of speed. And so I think what you're going to see more of now, people built like Ernie Els are going to swing like Justin Leonard, is what you're going to see more of. And if the USGA have their way, which I hope they don't, you're going to see Justin Leonard to the world not be there. Just not going to happen. So the amounts, the quantities of force vary. The way in which, if this is my left leg, that's my right leg. The push from the left leg to the trail leg is great in elite players, and then they're basically on their trail leg more than they weigh before they get to P2 in the backswing. That's how much linear force they push, and how much then the trail leg is pushing to keep them from falling over. And by the top of the swing, whether they can tell you it or not, they've moved up and rotated enough to where they're lighter into the ground than when they started. So I think at tour level, it's about 75% their body weight. At long drive level, it's about 50% of their body weight. So no matter what they look like, doesn't mean to say their arms go up, doesn't mean, it could just be thoracic extension. It could be pushing into the ground. They're getting lighter in the backswing. And they may not move much in space looking at them, but there is enough force down to make their weight essentially lift. And then in the downswing, with driver, by the time they're about lead on parallel, they're pushing about twice their body weight at tour level into the ground. And you can imagine if you're coming down with an object, and I've got that object up behind my head, and I want that object to line up in front of me, if they push the ground hard, it extends them up and away from the ball. So now they're pulling up on the handle approaching impact, and the head gets shot down into the ground. Tour level is about, like I said, twice their body weight, about shaft lead on parallel, and long drive is about 3 times their body weight, which is just
it's amazing,
crazy thought. Yeah. So those numbers are those numbers. Now, what that looks like from how they move could be different. People could have a higher center of gravity in their body, longer arms, longer legs, all that kind of stuff. But if you look on force plates, good force plates, those numbers are those numbers. And it's just hard to, like I said, once you've seen those forces, it's hard to unsee
it. As people read, well, they don't read anymore. They watch videos, even shorter videos.
Yeah.
They want the cliff notes. They go to Instagram. They want the full novel. They go to YouTube. But the different coaching philosophies, and I'm not going to get into which ones use which, but some will claim this is geometry. Some coaching theories will claim this is physics. Some will claim this is biomechanics. And this is where I think sometimes where we used to have the forums, and now we have the online forums, and now we have at least in person with like the coaching summit and the open forum. My question is to some of these coaches, if Nick and Michael have me as part of the open forum next year, would be to each of them, how do you differentiate? Because all of these physics, biomechanics, geometry, applied physics, these things all play a part in the swing, physics of the club and space, et cetera, proprioception, neuroscience, biology. How do you know or differentiate which one to apply at any given point in time for a particular student in front of you's game?
Yeah. So if it's not going very far, I'm looking at physics. If it's going crooked and far, I'm looking at geometry.
Okay.
then I don't get involved in the brain much, because that's a
you go down some dark tunnels in that
highly complex thing. Yeah. But the geometry is clearly needed. So if somebody's producing a lot of speed and can't get it to the ball, then I'd look more at geometry. If they're not producing speed, then I need the physics to kick in. I got to get the energy going. You mentioned biomechanics. I spent a long time looking at 3D, which was great. So kinematics, where somebody's moving in space. I'm really looking a lot more at the kinetics of what forces are they producing to make that movement happen. That's more relevant, I would say. But that, like we talked earlier, I've spent a long time looking at 3D motion capture, so I know the parameters pretty much of what I need to see. Great. How the heck do I get them to do it? That's kinetics. That's understanding the forces. And if people haven't looked at Sasha Mackenzie's work on what's being done at the grip, highly suggest they look at that, because, look at the forces that are being applied to the feet or through the feet to the ground, and then look at what Sasha's done from what's being done at the grip. You can really change golf swings if you understand where the force is pushing into the ground, when, and then what are you trying to do at the grip to make the grip line up with the club head. And I've been fortunate. Paul Wood's been great to me, and the guys at Ping. I've been to see the focal system a few times. Paul is great when I call him and ask him questions. They sent me some phenomenal data. Fujikura has been phenomenal. So actually looking at, without a golfer involved, because he doesn't see the 3D of the golfer, purely sees the 3D of the golf shaft, what is happening at the grip to make the club head move. And again, forces are invisible. But again, once you've seen what's actually being done to the grip to make the head move the way it is, it's phenomenal information to try and help somebody.
Yeah, I think that is the next frontier for the golf coaching or instructional world in general, is now that we have all these mountains of data from all these different measuring devices, that for some golfers or some coaches to have a better understanding of which science applies for a particular time. You're one of the few that answered that, like, without even hesitation, and no surprise with all everything that you've utilized and have the experience you have and the equipment you use and people you teach, the list goes on. But I don't think that enough people understand that, where they get pigeonholed, as we were talking earlier, in their own theory, and they'll say, well, this is physics. Okay, well, what about these other 4 to 5 sciences? Are you saying that those are negated in this? They all of a sudden don't exist because of geometry, or they don't exist because of physics? So I think the next frontier is for the masses or more coaches to start understanding when do I maneuver, or when do I pivot from one to the other, and then how do I do that? Because if you do it at the wrong time, you could cause somebody a lot of problems, or if you implement it wrong, it could cause somebody a lot of problems.
For sure. I think there's a lot of coaching where we're trying to tell people what they're doing wrong. I think there's enough that we know now to tell people what to do. And so I think we need to do a lot better at getting that information to just the general public. I mean, I'm not a golf pro at a club, so I travel a lot. Like I'm a diamond with Delta every year, which is not great.
A lot of mornings you wake up and look at the ceiling. Where the hell am I?
Call reception and say, where am I? Yeah, so I'm at ranges where I go to clubs where I'm not the coach. So I see a lot of players swinging and talking to each other, and there's a ton of people that need help. Whereas we tend to, as coaches, we're at the top of the tree, we're passing this and passing that. It's like there's so many baby building blocks that are needed out there for people. And Greg Rose has been great about this, because Greg is really, really good at taking complex stuff and making it simple. And it pisses people off because they want to get caught in the notion. Like, I don't care. Like, they need to do this better. Like, go make them do this better, whatever this is, and then come back to me. And more coaches, I wish, were like that. And I've really tried to do that. I don't know. I may have told you this story last time I was on, but I won't try and make it quick. But there was Paul Shamp told this story. It helped me a lot with coaching. And Paul is tremendous. If anybody wants to understand learning as a coach, he's a great resource. He said one of his friends was a phenomenal tennis coach, and he was coaching a guy, and his tennis coach thought he was the shit, like he was the man. He's coaching guy who's a really good tennis player. He's coached him for years, and this guy says one day, "Hey, I'm retiring in a couple of years. I love my wife. I want to spend some time with her when we're retired. I wanted to play tennis. Will you teach her?" And the guy goes, I don't teach beginners. But he goes, I understand, but will you teach her? He goes, for you, I'll teach her. Like, I'll do it, do you a favor. So the poor lady comes along for a lesson, and he said he's just wearing her out. She's running all over the court. He's telling her everything she's not doing correctly. It's like an hour lesson. 20 minutes into it, she walks up to the net, gives him the racket, and says, thank you. And he says, no, we're not done. She goes, no, thank you. You show me I can't play this game. And he said, I went from the best tennis coach in the world to the biggest piece of shit. And that's how a lot of golf pros are. They want to show you how you can't do what they can do, rather than show me some things I can be successful at. They get excited about it. Now you layer skills on top of that. Don't show them what they can't do. They already know they're not very, very good. That's why they're there. But show them what they could do and what they could do to get better. So like I teaching this morning, the guy, good player, overhooks it, pushes it. What did I do on that one? I don't care. I don't know. I'm lying to you if I could tell you exactly. I know geometry-wise what's happening, but I don't know on that particular swing what was wrong. The backswing still needs to improve. Focus on the backswing. When there's enough randomization, the next 1, 2, or 3 striped. Okay, still keep working on the movement we need. Because under the gun, you can't play thinking what's going to go wrong. Mm-hmm. You go, if I do these things correctly, I will hit decent shots.
Yes. A lot of students I have will say, that's it. Like, well, yeah. I mean, do you want me? We can go. I'll ask them. Some people who I'll know, but maybe they're just starting to come to me. But I know they're very, very, they'll read everything. They'll watch every video. Mm-hmm. Early on, I will ask them, I said, look, after they, when I figure out what I think they're doing wrong, I'll say, the rabbit hole can go very deep. So Alice, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? You just tell me how far you want this to go. I can explain it as deep as you want to, but do you want to keep it simple so that you can go play and enjoy the member guest this week or the city championship, or do you want to really go down a deep hole to understand the science part of it? So I'll give them the option.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And some people need the science, some people don't. Mm-hmm. I with good players, I'll generally ask them, what do they think about when they're playing or working on it, or what, I try and understand what do they want to know. Mm-hmm. And I'll try and tell them what I think they need to do. And then if they're curious, they may ask another question, or they may go, okay, that's good. Because I want to understand, like, where are they? I mean, I try and tell people, I don't want to send you away more educated. I want to send you away better. And I joke with them, if you can't sleep at night, call me and I'll be awake and I'll tell you. I'll tell you the stuff to put you to sleep, and within 5 minutes you'll be asleep.
Yeah, I want to ask you also one thing that I've noticed a number of your videos have, which I thought was great, because my dad is one person that forever has asked me, and I've been trying to keep it simple with him, and we still go over it. Is he always says, I don't know how to release the club. What do my hands and wrists do? And if he was on social media, I could just say, send him the link to your video and say, just watch this. Yeah. Jon makes it very simple. What was that, doing that video or the series that you've done? Well, I'll say a series, but you've done a number of videos on the wrist. Was that because you were seeing so many people either coming to you asking you about it, or you were seeing some people online doing it incorrectly as far as what you saw?
But both. So back to 3D motion capture, does the wrist go into flexion in the downswing? Yes, it does. Is that a consequence of forces being applied to the weight of the club? So again, Sasha McKenzie's stuff was very, very helpful. The mass of the golf club is not under the handle; it's near the head, as you know. It's like a third of the way down to the head, or a third away from the head. So you're applying force here at the grip, and the head is kind of doing the opposite. So understanding that was a huge learning piece for me, because that was very, very helpful. And then the idea when I grew up was, well, you got to get your hands working together. Well, actually, no, they don't work together. They work opposing forces. And you're not trying to release it. You're really trying to hold on. So if you were in the equipment man, you know more about club fitting than I do, but the golf club, as you know, the mass is down by the head, the face is off center of that mass, or off center of the shaft. So that face is in the act of trying to close.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's designed to do. If you built golf clubs that didn't try and close, you probably wouldn't sell any, or you sell them to high performers. When we used to do rack glue, you put rack glue in the toe of the club, didn't you, to slow down the draw, to slow the face down. That was only for tour players usually. So their technique is coming in such a way the head is behind the handle and coming from above their hands, so that the club is trying to pass the handle and it's trying to close. Tour players are trying to slow down that closing. It's a relative term. The club face is closing dramatically.
I think it's the toes moving. I think it's 7 miles an hour on average faster than the heel.
Yeah, so the ping stuff on focal is the face is closing for Hovland at 2,000 degrees per second. And Jimmy Walker would be on the high end. He's at 4,000 degrees per second. So whatever, I don't know the duration of that.
Whatever the conversion is to seconds, yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. So if you set up the right parameter, the face is trying to do that basically, and the head is trying to do that. So understanding what the club was doing, understanding what Sasha's technology was, or math was telling me, that the player is actually pulling towards them. So they're pulling in a hand path towards them. That is the release. The idea of people say, hey, I flipped it. I was like, no, you didn't flip it. The club is designed to flip. It's trying to flip past you. It's trying to flip closed. Your job is to anticipate that and offset that. And so that's how I describe the release. If you let it release, it will close on you if you're assuming you come from any decent position. A bad golfer generally doesn't have the head coming down inside the handle, so it's coming down from outside the handle. So it's actually falling open versus closed. So they have to try and twist it. So they never hit it well. So I don't try and get anybody to try and twist it. I tell them to try and line up the shaft correctly.
Yes, that was very simple and very clear when you said it's not a twisting where the forearms are rolling for the tech guys of Pro Nation, Super Nation. So it's not for the average golfer. Your forearms and hands aren't rolling over. That's not a release. That's if you're doing that, you better have your timing spot on.
Correct.
Because you're never going to play very good. Yes.
No, correct.
It's more of the flexion extension, or I don't even know how to make that sound simple.
It is, but it's that would be extension the lead wrist. And then if I've got a great picture of Mark Leishman. So when I used to coach Brendan Todd, I went to where was it? The Greater Milwaukee Open one year to watch him, because the schedule's working out. I went to a tournament to watch him. So Brendan's a rookie, Mark Leishman's a rookie, and so didn't know who Mark Leishman was. 3 holes into him, like, Brendan's really good, but this Leishman kid's going to win in no time. And he was hitting high bombs, fades. I've got a picture from behind of him when he won the Live event recently, and his wrist literally looked like his left wrist is pointing up and backwards. So it looks like that. And it's his arm is close to his shoulder. His left hand is close to his shoulder. So it's a full release, and he's hitting fades. And, fades, a lot of people are like, oh, you got to bow your wrist and hold it. And it's just, that's not a fade like a tour player hits a fade, because it doesn't go anywhere. So it may fade, but it doesn't, it goes about 2/3 the distance it needs to. These guys are hitting release fade. They're coming from a draw position. The shaft is passing them, and they're restricting that, basically.
And then another part of that was to somewhat dispel the theory that many amateurs in particular get, and even better players that maybe don't know, let's say young juniors or college kids or early in their professional career, that the hands staying so far ahead of the shaft or the head, even post impact. So leading in impact and okay, I don't want someone to say that I'm saying the hands aren't leading the club head on an iron in particular.
I'll say it if you don't want to say
it. Go ahead. I'll let you speak to it, because you've done a very good job with it, and I want people to again get more of the details from you, as opposed to just a 2-minute video.
Hold on, it just said the recording was stopped.
You're all good.
Yeah.
So
still going?
Yeah, go. So you go ahead and explain it, because you obviously have done
so Fuji told me this. Even with an iron, the shaft is in lead deflection at impact, meaning the head is ahead of the handle. Now, because you hit the ground and hit the ball, the head slows dramatically. So on video, it looked like the handle is forwards. But the shaft is trying to go into lead deflection on every swing. Now, if you look at a tour player, when they move, their pivot has gone from here to now their tailbone's forward, their body's back, and their arms are here. So now the orientation of the handles move forwards, but the handles and the force applied to the grip is not this way through impact, it's this way. Now the club is pulling them that way, and the head's doing that, and it hits the ball, and now it looks like that. So what we see in video and still pictures is not what's happening. Again, force is invisible. The club is being pulled back towards you. So it's not a leaning forwards of the shaft. The shaft may be ahead of where it was, but the pivot is nowhere near where it was at address. Now in an elite player, it's nowhere close to where it was at address. The thoracic's in extension, they're in right side bend, the tailbone's further forward than it was. The hands are not forward, but that part of the body is significantly more forwards and back than it was at address.
Yeah, I try to explain it to a lot of students is the axis of the oval that you're, or the arc that you're swinging on is your, if you, they get to try to give them a simplistic view of this. That's a complicated thing. That if your spine is the axis and you tip it away, your hands are going to try to release when they get realigned with the center of your body. And when they see that, at least that the light goes on in their head, that they think, oh, I don't have to hold this, or I don't have to, the pictures that I'm looking at in the magazines are not quite right. I said, well, you got to understand that's a still shot of something that's moving at 90 to 120 miles an hour, depending on what club they have.
Yeah, we used to say impact is a moment of truth, and I wish they would show the moment after impact, where the risks of, Nicholas said impact or release is where the shaft is in line with both arms post impact. I think for most recreational players, that's a much better visual than trying to get the shaft leaning forwards.
Hey, have you seen differences in the timing and or where the release occurs with different types of grips? So a stronger grip or neutral or weaker grip?
No, nothing I could say specifically. Okay. No, I want to get more of that from Focal. But the magnitude of force and the little amount of time in the downswing itself, it's a quarter second from top of backswing to impact. And the magnitude of force and closing rates, could there be a difference? I'm sure there is, but it's like so insignificant.
There's nothing you could.
I wouldn't try and pursue it.
No. It like certain like blades of grass affecting the roll of the ball. It's like it's so small. Don't even waste your time.
Correct. Yeah. Like would your energy be well served trying to figure that out? Probably not. I don't think so.
As we start to wind down, there was one thing on the list that we were talking about to review was the impulse. And I have a
massive.
Yes, I have a theory on this. I call it the pulsing drill. Now my my L4 is almost gone. When you look at an MRI, it's dark. It's dark gray. And Stu McGill was here in February, comes to Hilton Head, and I got to spend a lot more time than I probably deserved, but that was a treat, man. That was great, spending basically a day and a half with him. But I threw this question out to him. I sent it to Sasho. I think Jason Zubak, I sent it to him, obviously, because of his background.
Yeah.
And I said, look, for somebody who's got damaged goods like me, who can't sit out there and make full swings because the torques and the forces on the spine are just going to degrade it. I said, but what if I took my swing and I would use this for students too, under the same conditions, because we live in a largely retirement area. People are beat up after a lifetime. I said, if I took quarter swings or either shaft to parallel on the backswing, and then just went and did my forward swing, and basically got it to where I could hit the ball solid, and then start building speed. Let me measure it. Okay, I'm at 70. Let me see if I can get it to 75. Let me see if I can get it to 80. It's going to max out at some point. And then I'm not putting as many torques, or I'm reducing the amount of torque on my spine, or if somebody's got a hip or a knee. And then after develop that section of the swing, then let me take it back to left arm parallel or lead arm parallel, and let me do half swings that way, and then eventually you'd work it to full swings. But building the pulse from basically impact zone all the way back to full swing, or what is commonly referred to as the impulse. Do you see any logic or use for that, or am I just my brain just getting down into a rabbit hole that might not yield anything? You could save me time.
I would say if you got people to impulse as gasp looks at it is the total amount of force produced in the swing. And I think too many people think about acceleration in a golf swing. So if you could get people thinking more in terms of how could I create momentum, not acceleration, I think they would do a lot better. So if you say in the part of the world you're in, and I do it with people, is like either use a orange whip, because you got to kind of get that thing moving. I think that's a great way to do it, but try and create enough energy in the backswing to carry you into the downswing. Whereas I think too many people try and go back a short amount, and then the brain's trying to think, okay, I've got to get energy here, and they're over accelerating. So a lot of the motion in the downswing is really the slowing down, the deceleration phase, which you cannot do if you didn't create enough force times time. Dr. Rob Neal corrected me at the TPI World Fitness Summit. I said force over time. He goes, no, it's actually times time. I was like, great, thanks. I'm not a mathematician, but he was correct. So if I can create more force energy in the backswing, I'm only going to go back as far as maybe I could go, but for me, I should try and push it a bit more. But if I create that energy over that amount of time, times that time, then I got more chance of creating force coming down, whereas too many people try and create acceleration. So they underload, they don't load their feet correctly, they don't stretch their muscles up and back enough, and then they try and accelerate. So that's where impulse for me is a great learning moment, because I was trying to create energy even in the backs, and that energy still stays in the system. I've gotten involved with a guy, Steven Erickson, who built this thing called the E-Bell, and it comes from Korn, where he's using a kettlebell. Mm-hmm. And Steven built this thing with handles on it, and it looks like a flat. It looks like a bell, but it just like it's been flattened, and it weighs about 10, 15 pounds. And every tour player I've given it to, I say, hey, just swing this, see what you think. And they swing and they push with their left leg, move to the right, and the bell goes in a straight line like this. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
And they're like, what does it do? I said, well, basically, you just showed me you know how to swing, because you're moving linear force. I give it to a recreational player, and I asked the tour player, hey, is it heavy? And they go, yeah, I can feel a bit of weight to start with, but then it's pretty light back here. I said, yeah, great. Give it to a recreational player, they go, oh, God, that's heavy. And so, they're not creating enough. The tour player, without thinking about it, without knowing it, moves to the right side, kicks some energy across. Recreational player, I got to turn. They got no energy. They create rotation immediately, and the weight gets heavy. And then they're underplay and they lift up, blah, blah, blah. And so impulse for me is like, unfortunately for a tour player, they do it, don't realize they do it. Just like they have frontal plane torque, they don't realize they do it. Recreational player, no idea. Didn't know it was a thing.
I tell most people, especially because I get a lot of lessons in the spring from people coming down from the north in our area. And then through the winter, in the summertime, this doesn't apply as much because everyone's already been playing. But the best analogy I have, especially for our demographic, is to remind people of the old balsa wood airplanes that you could buy at the toy store for 50 cents. But I'll ask them, did you remember the one with the propeller? They say, of course, that was the $1 one. I say, if you didn't wind the propeller enough and you threw it, you would nosedive. So you have to have a big enough of a load or whatever, impulse in this terminology that we're using, to get back there, to have the unwind to come back to the ball. If you don't, you're flailing with your arms or throwing a club at the ball with your hands some way, but you don't have enough wind. Not telling them they need to turn more, but they're not
three-dimensional wind. Yeah. And harmonic oscillator.
Yes. And that really clicks.
Dr. Bob, so YouTube, Dr. Bob Grober I met at TPI with Dave. He has a thing on YouTube about harmonic oscillator force in the backswing resulting in the correct rhythm of the golf swing. So it's a great study. He just found that the best players create more force away from the target.
Very interesting. I'll have to reach out.
So you probably had John. You probably had John Novus. He runs a hedge fund, or does the algorithm for a hedge fund. He's a very interesting guy, but you can't find him. but he is on YouTube. So look him up on YouTube.
Those are always interesting ones to get on. I have some friends who've been trying to connect me to Mac O'Grady.
No, good luck.
That's what everyone said. I said that's like the white whale for podcasting. But if it ever happened, it would be a lot of fun.
Part of it would be fun, I'm sure. Yeah.
I should say interesting. Let me say interesting.
Yeah. Well, you need to find somebody who used to work with him because they all get kicked off eventually. So you need to find someone who is with him, and then you can get as close as you're going to get. Because, but yeah, Bob Grober, look it up on YouTube. It's very, very interesting stuff.
How do I spell his last name?
Grober, I believe.
Okay.
Grober. With Jon Novosel, you probably had Jon on.
Had Jon on. We had a blast.
Yeah. So with Jon, I've known Jon a long time and worked with Jon, and Jon's a long drive guy. And I called him a few years ago and said, hey, I've met this guy, Bob Grober. He's amazing. You should talk to him. Jon's like, yeah, I've known Bob a long time. I was like, okay, great.
That makes sense.
But Jon's stuff is ratio of time, but I didn't know how to get to those ratios. I knew the time. I knew there's a ratio of time, 3-to-1 for a full swing. And Bob explained to me how to get those ratios using force. So that's how Bob and Jon got connected.
Very cool.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
You got time for emergency 9? We'll wrap up with just some fun questions, and I get you out of here.
Yeah.
All right. The first one, the last one, everyone's gotten. It's kind of interesting to see everybody's answers. But the first one is if you're playing, let's say that you really got your game back in shape and you just went on a tear and you made the Ryder Cup team. And you're going to walk up to the first tee and they're going to crank some music. What song are you going to have them play?
Eminem, Lose Yourself.
That would get everybody going.
Because you feel like you're going to puke on yourself.
You can't feel anything.
Nope.
Hollywood calls you. Said, Jon, we've followed your career for some time from afar, and we're really impressed with it. We're going to make a movie about it, and we're going to let you or your wife cast.
Is it a movie about my life?
It's a movie about your life, and they're going to let you pick the actor that plays you.
Can I do the script as well?
Sure, but
just to really inflate it.
Yes. Who are you going to have them play you?
Did I lose you? Oh, I was going to say perfect timing. You asked me a great question like that, and then we get the satellite feed goes away. Oh my gosh. Tom Hardy would be awesome.
That's what I had in mind.
Because I'm nothing like Tom Hardy. I'd be scared shitless, but he's a badass.
He is. If you watch Mobland,
oh my gosh, yeah, it's great. He says the things that people I want to say. Yeah. So, yeah, he'd be great. Yeah.
This one,
he's a completely tough guy.
Interested in your answer on this one. Mount Rushmore of coaches. 4 coaches that you would put up on the mountain.
Butch, Pete Cowan. I think Dave Pells deserves to be up there from a short game research and work.
Just bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, David Ledbetter, I would say. I would have to be up there. There's many that you could put up, but if there's 4 of them, I think those would be...
That's pretty good.
4 phenomenal ones, yeah, for different reasons.
In your opinion, the best swing in golf, men or women, doesn't matter.
The one that always interested me was Robert Garrigus for a long time, which might sound a bit bizarre. But that was always fascinating. I mean, obviously Adam Scott looks beautiful. And Oberg's swing is amazing. So I think that's a great. Garrigus was very interesting because he absolutely nuked it from a fairly short backswing and clearly very, very strong. The one that really impressed me for a long time, which I didn't think would have done, then I saw him live a few times, was Kenny Perry. Talk about, I mean, like drove it so good.
And long.
And long. And I always put him in, and it's not an insult, but I put him in the country strong kind of category. He may have lifted weights, but he just looks like he was just a strong dude and just beat on it.
Yeah, and almost had the slow, almost pause, droopy backswing, and then still murdered it.
Murdered it, hit hooks every time. And Billy, who works with me, Billy Mitchell's a very good player, and Billy's, I mean, he does an impersonation on it. He goes like, what do you do when the flag's on the right? He goes, I aim at the right side of the green, draw it back into the middle. And what do you do when it's on the middle of the green? So I aim at the right side of the green, draw it back to the middle. What do you do when it's on the left side of the green? I win.
He won a number of times too.
He won a number of times, yes. I said to somebody, that one of the tour players the other day, I said, he wasn't a very good putter. He goes, yeah, he was a streaky putter. But he wasn't known as a good putter, but he was a streaky putter. And so, but yeah, he won a bunch of times and should have won. I think he should have won the Masters, actually.
Yes.
But,
I think he did. Yeah, he won Memorial at 50, 51, 2, something like that, I think.
He won it a couple of times late in his career, yes. I think, and then lost in the Masters late in his career in a playoff, I believe. Yeah, so amazing player. And, like a interesting looking golf swing. Over, above playing in the backswing. Right foot stayed down till his golf club was almost over his head in the through swing.
Like a Mo Norman.
Phenomenal. Yeah. So people like that, I'm fascinated with, so like if he had a coach, Ron Green coaching for a long time. So Ron clearly understood what made it work, what didn't make it work. Like how many of us would have screwed that up?
No kidding.
Yeah. That's good coaching.
Favorite training aid, if you have one?
Well, I have a relationship with eBell. So, that's, and then the reason I have a relationship is I bought it and liked it a lot. I think that's phenomenal. Orange Whip is phenomenal. And then I've started doing some stuff also with Rotex stuff, which is very, very interesting. Dr. Joe, I'm getting to know a little bit. But the eBell, Steven Erickson, Jimmy with Orange Whip, and Rotex. The thing about the best training aids for me, no matter what it is, Sean Foley's a friend of mine, and I tell Sean, and I will, I've seen him, but anytime the aid is doing something for you, it's not to me doing the work. I need the player to do the work. So the eBell, you got to get it moving. The Orange Whip, it's counterbalance, you got to get it moving. And the Rotex, you've got to get it moving. So I need the player doing the work. A training aid for me dealing with competitive players, if it's doing the work, it's not training them anything. It's giving them a concept, but it's not doing what I need the player to do. I need the player physically, cognitively tuned into what they're trying to do.
Makes sense. Restaurant in your kitchen. Be interested to hear your answer, because you've been around the world. What restaurant, if you could put it in your kitchen, would you put there?
Oh, like a brand of restaurant?
Can be a chain, can be an individual restaurant, can be anything. So basically saying whatever your favorite food is, who makes it, and who would you put in your kitchen?
Yeah, I love sushi, but I do like grilling. I just bought a Traeger over the weekend. I have a grill on my back deck. I like that. It's therapeutic. I actually get to do something and see a result. It's great. So I do like grilling. I like cooking. So the Traeger's pretty cool. I don't have it yet. I've got a nice grill in the backyard, so I do like that. But sushi, I enjoy eating it, but I love the discipline of watching those guys make it.
Yeah, it's very impressive. There's a great sushi place here. Next time you're down, we'll go over there.
I'd love
really
to. There's
good.
a great thing on PBS. I think it's Euro Love Sushi or something like that. So there's a Japanese saying, you may know what it is, but it's like it's the pursuit of something. I forget what the term is, but it's like a task that you never actually achieve the goal. And the Euro Loves Sushi is a program about this guy who was the main guy at this sushi restaurant. And it's like it takes years to get a table there. There's only like 10
Oh, the one
tables.
He's in the subway.
You're correct.
Yes.
Yeah. And this guy there's some poor dude in the back cooking in the subway, and it takes him 2 years to learn how to do egg sushi properly. 2 years.
Yes.
Like, come on now. Can you imagine Americans taking?
He got that spot, and I think the Obamas got seats there one time just because they were with the in Japan, the prime minister.
Yeah, it's prime minister. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the emperor, but the prime minister is the elected official.
So that'd be very cool to have somebody. At that
but just from a mindset of what we do, like constant search of mastery, not perfection, but just mastery of skills. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's like the Japanese like the samurai mancha.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, and they have a word for it, and I don't want to butcher it.
Oh, I'll think of it probably as soon as we get off the air.
Yeah, but that's very cool. Like understanding the pursuit of something, we're not necessarily believing you're going to actually achieve that success.
Here, let me look it up real quick. No delay, everybody.
True bullet, yeah.
No, it's not what I thought. So I won't stick my. Oh, yeah. Bushido is the moral code of the samurai. Emphasizing virtues as loyalty, honor. That's not what I was thinking.
There's another word that's like learning a skill.
Yes.
But anyway, we'll put it in the notes.
Your favorite purchase of in the last year of under $1,000?
Oh, under 1,000.
Can be anything. Can be your grill. Can be.
This is interesting.
I was going to say it can be an Aura
ring. Yeah, interesting. Wearable technology. Sleep shaming me. Wake up in the morning, think you slept well. He goes, nope, could do better. No, it's been good, and it's been interesting to look at that just from a wearable stuff and that kind of thing. If you ask me at the same time next year, my Traeger grill was under 1,000.
I'm sure that'll be on there. Yeah, I had the Pit Boss, which is a Traeger competitor, and I got that 5 or 6 years ago, and I was never a big griller. I love grilled food, but it'll make you the champion of the house. All you do, you set your temperature, you cook it to a certain internal, and you're done, and it looks just like the picture. It's great. You're gonna love it.
I'll send you pictures if it works out.
Absolutely. Two more. Would you rather have your best round ever or your worst round but a hole-in-one?
Best round ever.
That seems to be the one that takes the cake.
I've had holes in one.
And then, in your opinion, as far as golfers are concerned, who is the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time?
Tiger.
Hard to argue with that one. I think he's in the lead.
Yeah. I mean, Nicklaus from a pure record, but I think there's one stat I saw early on that Nicklaus, like when he won over, I forget what it was, 10 majors, maybe it's 135 over par, and Tiger was like 30 some under par.
Yes, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, I've met both of them. They're unique individuals. But yeah, I think Tiger is just astounding. It's also astounding. It's 25 years since he did most of that stuff. It's
what are you scary. Speaking anywhere? You got anything coming out? A product, a book, website?
No books. Yeah, Tattersall Golf is a website. I'm also I've got a Uscreen thing going where it's I think I said when we were on air, but like trying to help more people is important to me at this point. So this Uscreen thing, it'll be under Tattersall Golf, it'll be all there, but it's a way to stay in touch and then do some webinars once a month where people could call in, ask questions, and so people need one-on-one help, but there's so much stuff we can do to the masses.
Yeah, basically. To the masses more.
Yeah, I don't. Where am I speaking? Not until February that I know of. I may be doing something for Titleist this fall, but nothing that I'm currently aware of.
Well, when you post it, we'll share it on social media, and as always, we'll have one-click links to your website and all your social media sites. Hopefully, we can get you some more traffic, and we'll try.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Try to keep the ones who argue relentlessly out of the way.
I'm getting better at ignoring them.
John, has been great. Thank you for coming on again. Pete. It's always fun to talk to you, and we always have great conversations.
Yeah, keep the ideas coming. I think there's so much that we can do and share and help people, and let's keep at it, man.
Awesome. Well, hang out just a minute, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you all next time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.